like I wasn't never somebody who went into being like, I want to be a music video director. Never in my mind, granted, I loved music videos, like for bands I liked, I would always enjoy watching them, but it was never like a thing in my mind. Everybody that I came up making these little short films with, at least for the most part, my close friends, are now doing it with me in Hollywood on the biggest scale. So that's a fun point in my story that a lot of people were like, man, that's sick that you're able to do that and bring everybody along with you. So
this is the GoodBadMad podcast. We sit down with creators and chat about their creative careers, from film, theatre, literature, fashion, and more. Our guest for this episode is Christian Breslauer, a music video and commercial director. He's won 3 VMA awards and has directed videos for the likes of Ariana Grande, Lizzo, SZA, John Legend, The Weeknd, and Doja Cat, just to name a few. Listen in to hear about his journey from creating camcorder skateboard films to working with some of the biggest names in the music industry. Welcome. How are things in LA?
Got a lot of things in action right now. Just a bit of crazy on my side, but it's good things. All
good,
great
crazy,
things.
Good, crazy, busy, good.
Yeah, just things are heating up in a crazy way.
Good.
I need to find a way to clone myself.
So, should we start from the very beginning? And how you got into directing, producing, writing, why you got into projecting, producing, directing, writing, all of it.
Yeah, for me it started, I started as a young kid growing up in South Florida. And the initial thing with camera for me was always like, summertime stuff with my friends where we would, grab my mom's VHS camera, make little movies and stuff and kind of show them to the family. It started very much in that place. Probably at the age of like 7 or 8, around that time is when I got into it. And it was before like predating editing software, stuff like that. It was like literally VHS, you would shoot a scene, and if you wanted to change something, you rewind and record back over the tape, and you would shoot that way. So it was like the earliest times of messing with stuff. And then as I got a little older, I would say probably like 11 or 12, started dabbling in editing softwares and still making, little skateboard film. At the time I was making skateboarding, so making skateboard films and stuff like that. And then as I got into high school, like freshman year, dove into the TV production program head first and kind of got to really play around there and realizing that maybe this is something I want to do with my life, but it was fun because even what's that?
They had a TV production program at your high school.
Yeah. So, I mean, the crazy thing is it's a program that kind of gears people up to go into the TV, broadcasting space. So it was very much not in the creative realm. So that was the one thing I had beef with it. It was like, they'd be like, oh, go like find a story to tell around school. And I didn't love the journalism side of it. I was like, no, why can't I make like a funny short film and screen it to the school? And eventually I ended up getting a teacher who was very much saw that I had like raw talent and creation and just kind of let me, instead of trying to box me in and say, you have to do this for curriculum, was just kind of like, let me let this kid off the leash a little bit. And yeah, he let me off the leash and I would just make funny films and short films. And I got known around the school, kids would call me young Spielberg and stuff because I was just always the kid with the camera. And I still made short films with my friends in the summertime. Like we spent, like 3 summers one time with all my best friends, making this like war movie epic that never came out, but it was like 45 minutes long. My dad would help me build the props. My mom would help take us to get the costumes. All my best friends, like we, had everybody play a million roles, so it was very, very simple filmmaking, but kept the joy alive. And the fun part is I still do it with a lot of my friends. Like my brother's my producer. My best friend, since like the day he was born, he does all my line producing and my finance at the business side. And my other friend who was in those films, he works with us and does our production coordinating. So everybody that I came up making these little short films with, at least for the most part, my close friends, are now doing it with me in Hollywood on the biggest scale. So that's a fun point in my story that a lot of people were like, man, that's sick that you're able to do that and bring everybody
It
along with you.
is.
So
It is. Do you still have that 40-minute war epic?
you know, what's so funny is I have clips of it. Like I have the trailer, I
Yeah.
have like a couple scenes, but the full film is on like my old desktop that's in storage. I still have the computer. I got to go dig and find it all, but like it's probably on a Premiere program like Premiere CS3 or whatever I was editing in at the time that I don't even know if I could get the project file to open. I mean, it would be very
Yeah.
curious if I could, but
It would
it's
be
somewhere in the
fabulous.
ethers of somewhere that I never got the 45-minute edit on a DVD. I don't know, it's stupid of me, but I was a disorganized kid at the time, you know?
Yeah. Well, at some point you can look back on it and go, okay, now I'm going to remake it knowing everything I know now. And
Uh,
it will be like a 3 hour long.
yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, because like early in my directing days, and like when I started getting into music videos, before I was like really established, you know, the couple things I did have a chance to start playing with on the money side was, you know, some projects where I was making war films because I knew it really well. I grew up knowing how to do my own After Effects and color, and I grew up shooting, so I DP'd my own stuff and you know, I was able to take budgets back when I wasn't established as a director and make like a war epic. Like I did a video with an artist named Trippie Redd, and it wasn't an insane budget, but like I did. It looks like you show anybody, and they're like, "This looks like it's expensive as hell," and it's like, no, like, you know, I did all the DP, like I did everything. I picked out the props, like I went to the prop house and grabbed all the guns, and so a lot of that early filmmaking stuff I did paid off, like because that video opened a lot of doors for me like that. If I look at it, that door from shooting that video got the attention of a big manager for Roddy Rich's manager at the time, who then wanted me to do a video for him, which ended up leading to me doing The Box for him, which then, you know, was like my big break as a director. So note to young people out there is just like you never know how the stars align. I just was always excited about filmmaking and doing it, not even thinking about where it could take me, right? It was just never about where it could take me. It's just like I'm having fun doing it, and I still am that way. Like granted, I've made it so far in my career, but I'm still not thinking about where I'm going to be as much as like I still enjoy the hell out of creating. You know, I think it's what keeps me sane.
No, I think anyone with kind of a creative bone in their body like needs to express it in order to keep that sanity for sure. Okay, so that's quite a grassroots story then, like very much like hands-on from day dot in terms of learning filmmaking. Did you ever like study it?
No,
So
that's the other part of my story is that obviously came into it young, loved doing it, but when it came time to graduate, like I didn't have the best grades. I wasn't great academically. I mean, I was in the sense of like creative writing and a lot of things. Math was just a killer for me. I really struggled. I just struggled with the idea of like, why do I need to know certain things that aren't going to? I want to be a filmmaker. Why do I have to learn this? You know, that was kind of at that crossroads of being an adolescent. So when it came time to graduate, I didn't have the grades, and my parents financially were really in tough times. So I didn't have a chance to go to college. When I came time to graduate, I always wanted to go to like USC and move to California and do all these crazy things. And in reality, I graduated and was a bit depressed by it. And I didn't touch a camera for probably a whole year and a half because I just figured like, oh, my dreams are dead, and started working in restaurants and was like, I'll figure it out. Maybe, you know, like you feel your dreams slipping away. And then,
because you thought you had to have that formal education.
Yeah, I just figured, you know, I'm in Florida. It's not really a huge film community down there. It's like at the time I never shot a music video. Wasn't really like a massive fan of music videos. Like, you know, like I wasn't never somebody who went into being like, I want to be a music video director. Never in my mind, you know. Granted, I loved music videos. Like for bands I liked, I would always enjoy watching them, but it was never like a thing in my mind. So ultimately, I, you know, kind of gave up on my dream. And funny enough, it took me being on Twitter one day and an artist, a kid who was rapping at the time that went to my high school, We never really talked while we were in high school. I just knew he went to my high school and he was rapping and kind of had some buzz or whatever. I followed him on Twitter and he put up a post looking for like like somebody to shoot videos. And I looked at the tweet and I'm like, never shot a music video, but I'm not doing anything. And so I wrote him. I said, yeah, man, I'd do something. And he's like, yo, come over. So I ended up going over to his house. We linked up that day and he's like, let's go shoot something right now. And I was like, oh shit. Like
straight back in the deep end.
So I grabbed my little Canon T2i DSLR and we went out there and shot. And then I was like, man, that was a lot of fun. And then me and him just kept building. And it was like my creative partner of just, pushed me to do creative ideas. He had music that gave me some sort of outlet to create. And then as he started getting bigger, I started getting bigger and he would work with artists that are featured and I'd work with the featured artist. And then the featured artist would be like, I like your work. And then kind of grew organically. And I was like, still working in restaurants and, on my days off shooting videos for no money, like not even making money. It was just something fun to do. Yeah. And that ultimately spurred me on the path of making music videos was it's been generally my film school. I've been kind of learning as I go.
Well, I mean, the debate is it's slightly better than the formal education. So
yeah, I mean, if I could say anything on it, if you don't have the means to go to school, I think there was a lot of advantages in my life that came from the road less traveled in the sense of it forced me to kind of learn everything, right? It was, yeah. I had to know how to edit. I had to know how to like do my own color corrections and effects and stuff that like, I didn't even have big budgets to make things look big, but by me learning how to light and operate cameras and do everything, I could add production value without anybody gatekeeping it from me, right? It wasn't that nothing from a budgetary standpoint could affect the quality of my videos because it's like just a matter of how much of the work I wanted to put into it.
Yeah.
And by me knowing these things, it worked to my advantage because when I finally started getting little budgets, like if somebody gave me $10,000, chances are I was able to make it look like 40,000, because I didn't have to pay all these people to do a million jobs in my set. So it very much worked in my advantage of climbing the ladder of not coming into it like fresh out of film school and be like, oh, I need all these people. And I trust me, I know people who shoot themselves in the foot because they don't know how to do a lot of things.
Yeah. So, but at the heart of it, it sounds like you're a techie guy. Like you're a camera guy.
Yeah, I was DPing for a long time before people gave me my directing shots. So like once I realized I was in this industry and nobody was really giving me a full shake on directing, I was like, all right, well, let me get into the DP world where I don't have to write treatments and it's just more so about networking and meeting directors who, are like, I like your style and kind of doing it that way. So I became a nerd in the camera department and, all things editing and VFX because like I said, it was me. I realized that was the value is how to maximize my production value.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay, so it's building quite organically at this point. You're kind of going, okay, I'm meeting that person, meet the next person, meet the next person. At what point do you actually go, okay, I know what I'm doing. I can actually ask people to pay me money for this.
I don't know if it ever reached a point where I knew I could ask people for money. It was more or less like
they just started offering it.
It was like you have an idea and it's going to take money to do that idea. And yeah, it was kind of like that. I didn't really do it necessarily for the money at first. I can't even remember. I think the first time I got paid to do a video was this girl who the artist I was shooting for, his name's Jordan Hollywood. He at the time was plugged in with other artists and I met this girl named Tip Drill and she was kind of like an exotic dancer in Miami and she was going into rapping, kind of like early Cardi B, like in that range, right? Yeah. And so she was the first person who was like, yo, I'll give you like $500 to do my video. And I'll never forget, she like paid me in all ones that were like just banded up with like loose hairs in it and shit. And I remember feeling like, I'm like, oh man, somebody paid me to do this. And I think from there, it just kind of pooled into like, people would be like, hey, how much do you charge? Right. And like at the time I'd be like, oh, $500, I'll shoot your video and edit and the whole nine. And And then I guess it just ultimately scaled from there.
You're like very involved conceptually in the building of these music videos. What are some of the key elements that you kind of focus on when you are conceptualizing these music videos?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to conceptualizing, I don't like write treatments with anybody. Every idea you've
Yeah.
ever seen me make is just literally my idea. I mean, sometimes,
Yeah.
granted, you work with an artist who has a framework of an idea and they come to you and say, like, what can you build off of it? But yeah, I mean, for me, my creative process is a bit all over the place. Like I would say this is probably the most asked question whenever I do like panels or anything. Is like, what is your creative process? And it's everything everywhere all at once. You know, like sometimes I'll hear a song and it speaks to me right away, and there's like a vision, like either the tone of the record or something in it will drive my idea. Sometimes it's the artist has a brief framework of an idea and I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that, and then I'll build off of that idea. So it's very much all those things, but I like to take a step back approach. Like before I lock anything in, it's like I just throw everything at the wall, right? So it's like, even if I know the artist has like these ideas that they want that idea to be in, I just still let my brain go free and I write everything down, because you never know. Sometimes noodling down a hole of an idea that's not even aligned with the artist creative will lead you to a path where, oh, I could weave this with the artist creative and it's even more creative in the grand scheme. So I'd say that's the first step of my process, is just kind of doing a lot of that.
So you hear the song, you get the lyrics, and then you just kind of let your brain go. Okay.
Yeah, I usually sit with a notepad next to me and I'll just like listen to it and I'll write an idea. Even like it could be most random ideas all at one time. Like I don't even try to force make them all go together. I'll just like write a cool idea, like just loose ideas, and then I'm kind of sitting there and I keep stewing it and I try to plug and play, like, oh, could this work with that? And then what are the lyrics telling me? Is there some sort of mood to chase, and all those aspects. So
and say you put together a treatment and then you deliver that to the artist and the producers, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
What does that treatment look like? What does it include?
I mean, my treatments over the years have changed, right? When you're a young director coming in, you got to be very descriptive. Like you don't have a name, you don't have any past work really carrying your face forward. So early in the career, it's like lots of visual references, good writing, creative writing. So you write your plot summary, you get into mapping out the scenes and the flow, and then usually sometimes we go into like lighting breakdown, like what the tone of it is going to be. And then if there's really specific styling, you do a styling page of like styling this. If there's production design stuff that's really specific, you go deep. That was early on my career. I did a lot of that. I still do it on certain jobs where it needs to be, but I will say that 90% of the work I'm doing now is literally me almost doing one sheets, like listening to the record, and sometimes not even with visual references, just writing ideas and sending it as a paragraph. And then maybe I have a couple images that I send in like this world. And most artists just trust me and they're like, I know whatever you're doing, this guy is going to do it, because I have the work that stands like, hey, I even if they don't fully understand it, they could just be like, I get where he's coming from and I trust him. So I've worked to get to that point, because I remember early in my career, I've had like when I was writing against certain people, like I'd catch glimpses of people's treatments, like somebody big like Jonas Ackerlund, right? Famous, and I remember them saying he can't do it because of COVID, but he's down to give you this idea. And it was just literally a paragraph. And I'm like, that would be so sick to be able to just send a paragraph and get a job. And I mean, granted, I guess I've landed in those shoes, but commercial side, still very much detailed treatments. But on the music video side, depends on the artist. Like if they're really visual, a lot of times now I'll do a paragraph and maybe I'll just put a lookbook of like visual references so they could see the tone and the styling and world. But that's kind of...
There seems to be like a lot of visual references to films and things throughout your videos. Is that just like the cinephile in you just going, okay, I love this, I need to kind of pull on this?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I was never really a huge music video fan, right? So like my music video cinephile self isn't as deep as like the cinema guy in me. So everything I reference is always movie related, right?
Yeah.
I like to consider myself like, what Tarantino does with film of like kind of like grabbing little pieces of everything and kind of making
Right.
something new. I would say that's mainly what I like to do is, not to say that every video I've done is just a pull out of a movie, but I love to have a glimpse of something in
Yeah.
there, like even in a video like Industry Baby, it's like there's nothing really movie related in there, but if you go and tap in, the one thing is like the Shawshank Redemption, the little hammer and the tunnel behind the poster. That was like my little flavor of, a movie reference in there. So
Yeah.
some videos have a lot of them, and some videos have less of them, but it's always something that I try to do because I love making movies and I
it's your
love
little
movies. So
signature.
for me, it's like if I could take a movie that I love and find a way to put it through my lens and, fitting my narrative, that's so fun to me because I'm a fan of movies. And to me, that's paying homage. I know people are like creative people in this industry hate homage. They think, oh, it's just stealing or whatever. But like for me,
The entire industry is homage.
But for me, it's like I think it's so fun and I get it if you're directly ripping something, like if you're fully ripping something to rip it, yeah, it's not the same. But even like the latest video with Ariana Grande, the We Can't Be Friends, was like her album was called Eternal Sunshine. We both were super fans of the movie, and
You can't not reference it.
Yeah, we sat back and we were just like, hey, what is the like best approach to this? And the more we sat with it, I was like, what if we like take the spin of we never got to see the female's perspective in that film. Like it was just like Clementine erased Joel from her mind, and we're with Joel trying to pick up the pieces of what he should do and go through the process. I was like, did Clementine, was she emotional about deleting Joel? Like, what was that feeling? So I was like, oh, this is kind of fun because then it goes into the fanfare. It's like, could we explore this world? But we made it more art. Like the doctor's office feels more like in the tone I like to play. And Michelle Gondry shot on film and everything's handheld. I was like, I want it to be very much static and dolly and very mechanical and use handheld as like more of a creative language. Like when you watch the video, there's only a few handheld shots, and it's like the first one being she's sitting on the edge of the bed when they're clearly like at a divide, and it's like booming down. And right when she gets up off the bed, we go handheld with it. It's like her breaking free of this, relationship.
Moment,
We follow her to the door, and then the next time it's handheld is after the procedure's done and she's hugging the doctors, and then she's walking with the new guy at the end. That's all handheld, and I did that intentionally to kind of show. So it's different than like, I think that's the interesting thing about it is that you could take a concept, which is the world building aspect of something like Eternal Sunshine and the idea, and how can we do it to like tell a unique story that's in the pocket of what we're trying to tell. And to me, that's the right way to do an homage, right? It's like you're still giving your flowers to the original piece because it's fucking genius and nobody could ever touch it. But it's like, hey, we're showing that we can still bring life into this idea in a new, fresh way. And honestly, ultimately introduce a whole new audience to the film. Like I guarantee the majority of just seeing comments from Ari's fans, like nobody really knew the film. They're like, I got to go watch this film. I don't know the data, but I'd love to see the data on how many people like the streaming or downloads on that movie was after the fact. But very much so.
Yeah. And with something like Yes and you've got, I guess, this plot that you've conceptualized of like, well, I mean, I'm assuming you had these conversations about reputation and kind of voicing her side of that, and then you've got this huge choreography piece. Like, how did that video come together? I'm fascinated.
It's so funny because me not being a music video fan, it's ultimately one of my favorite directors is David Fincher, right? And David Fincher started in music videos. So once I figured that out, I was like, I was just gravitate every film, everything he's done. I was just always such like a fan of, I think we're just both OCD guys that the way he shoots films makes my OCD like hug me,
really
it's
happy.
like doesn't put, exactly. So, he had this music video he did for Paula Abdul. called Cold Hearted Snake, and I've loved the video for a long time. It's like one of my favorites, and even though it's not one he won tons of awards for, I just always thought like the bare bones of like, you know, this rugged raw music video that's really choreo based. And hers was about like the record label coming in to see the choreography and whatnot.
Yeah.
And that was originally a takeoff of Bob Fosse and All That Jazz. And there's the scene in All That Jazz where they have kind of like a scaffolding thing, and all the like people are sitting there like kind of hating on it, and it gets really sexy and steamy. And I was like, man, I loved it. And it's an idea I've wanted to recreate for a long time, and just kind of waiting for the right artist to do it with. It was initially, believe it or not, something I pitched to Lizzo for About Damn Time originally. And she's like, Christian, I absolutely love this, but like, I don't think I can learn a full song's worth of choreography to pull it. And I was like, okay. But it matched so well. Like when you put the videos together, I was like, oh. Yeah. So then I'm glad it didn't happen, because I love the video I made for About Damn Time. And then when Ari's track came through, like even before, like she played it for me when we had our first call, and I was like, this sounds so like early 90s Vogue. Like I have the reference immediately went to my mind. I was like, I have to get this record from her, and I have to just play it and watch this visual and just see if this is a choreo based song. And I did it, and I was like, hear me out. I was like, all right, check this out. And I was like, this is the world I want to play in. I said, I don't want it to be about record labels. I want to find a way to personalize the story, but let's have the heart of it be like a cool homage to Cold Hearted Snake, but telling your story. Same thing, you know, I always try to do. So her song was very much about addressing all the gossip and, you know, kind of critics and stuff like that, because during her downtime between albums, it became very much spotlit on her personal life. So I was like, well, let's highlight that. I said, what if we had it be where like, it was like this Ariana Grande experience where you are inviting batches of your biggest critics to come to meet at a location, and they had no idea what they're walking into. And you see them all gossiping in the hallway, and then the doors open, and you know, you see this crowd of people walking out. We have no idea who they are. They're like shirtless and all this shit. And you're like, they seem excited, and these people walking in confused. And you see these statues, and it feels like, oh, is this just some sort of art piece? And the visual metaphor behind that was like, okay, this is kind of who these statues are, kind of representation of how you see them, right? So it's like,
and that's set in stone.
And that's set in stone. And then when that breaks away, here's who I really am, performance. And she ultimately lands back in stone where it started, but you know, now it's up for representation for the next person, but those people's viewpoint has changed. So it was like, the creative behind that was very intriguing to me, because it's like, we're taking our critics on a journey. And as you see, like the lights go dark, and we put this like heat lamp on them, almost putting the heat on them and making them sweat through it, but they're enjoying it, and taking them through this journey of transformation of being an Ari hater to, you know, a lover. And
no, I was thinking about that metaphor the other day, because I was chatting with an actor in the West End, and I was telling him how like seeing the show with different casts and it completely changes your opinion and your thing. But ultimately, you're watching the same piece of art, and it was just kind of an extension of that metaphor. Is like depending on where you are and what you are, and people ultimately changes.
I mean, that's one of the most exciting things about doing what we do, is just that it's going to be different for everybody, right? Like people hear something, it means something different to them. And that's the beauty of it, is art is transformative for whoever the lens that's looking at it. So, you know, for some people, they might just watch that and be like, this is just a great dance video. And that's all they take from it, where somebody's like, oh my God, I feel the whole story. I feel everything. And
they see the Bob Fosse, they see the...
Exactly. They're, oh my God, I was such a big fan of Paula Abdul, and this is everything. Like Paula Abdul loved the video. That was like the biggest payoff for everything. She like followed me and messaged me like, thank you so much. This was amazing. And that's the best way to do it. If like you're paying an homage and somebody who had the original piece is over the moon about it, then to me, that's the ultimate goal. You know, you never want to piss somebody off. You hope that they appreciate you keeping, like, I know if I created an original piece of content and somebody spun something off of it to a new generation, I would be so grateful for it. I'd be like, that was beautiful. Thank you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you're, I mean, I guess from the beginning all the way through to kind of now where you're working with these kind of massive budgets and very, 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 very well-known artists, like how do you go about collaborating with them? And like ultimately you're coming to them with an idea, they've probably got ideas in their head. Like how do you build that relationship and that trust?
I think it just varies between artists, right? So some artists are very hands-on and they have lots of ideas, opinions, and stuff like that, whereas others are very much like, take the wheel and I trust you. So
Mm-hmm.
the first instance is like as soon as an artist reaches out, it's usually kind of like a feel out period. Like, I mean, granted, there's still instances where you're writing a treatment, you never get a chance to meet the artist, and then they like you, and then you jump on a call. But sometimes, at least now in my career, uh, most of the artists I work out with, we seek each other out one way or another, whether it be me telling my agent I really want to work with somebody, them putting feelers out, and then ultimately getting a call, or the artist being a fan of my work reaches out, let's take a call. And usually the first call is kind of like feel out vibes. Do we have chemistry? And then let's play some music and let me sit with it. Here's what I'm thinking. And I like to keep the creative process very fluid in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I always ask, do you have any ideas for this? Is there anything you see or you saw when you're writing it? And sometimes there is. And a lot of times they might be like, oh, I saw this idea, but I'm not ultimately married to it. But if you could work it in some way.
Yeah, like a little reference.
Yeah, it's really just so the more you grow as a director, you start learning all these things because, as much as directing is a creative process of, having good ideas and executing, there's so many other factors to being a director, at least on a high end scale of working with celebrity talent daily, is just how can you communicate and how can you like sell forth your ideas and be collaborative and understand the push and pull of the creative process and then how to lead your crew, down the line of bringing the vision to life and all the things that happen on set with scheduling and time and all the bells and whistles. I always tell people, I'm like, there's so much more to directing than just actually coming up with good ideas.
Yeah.
Like the good idea is probably like 10% of the job. And then the rest of it is so much more compounding.
Well, this is the thing. So you've had the idea. Now you've got to make the idea.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of good ideas die just with overzealous ideas meets budget meets time and execution. See creative people being too obsessed about a shot that doesn't really matter in the grand, like, they're obsessing over this establishing shot and killing their day, and then they lose it in the performance. So weaving the web of getting everything you want as well as performance is a lot of time and effort that goes into learning your craft to master those things.
And is this where having those kind of long-term friends, your brother as part of that integral team, really comes into play?
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of the same crew on everything I do, and that's a big part of it, right? It's like when you're working with family and you have people you trust, you don't have to micromanage things.
Yeah.
And so that allows me to kind of keep my focus on the task at hand, which is me understanding everybody's there to get my vision over the line. And if I'm very focused on my vision and understanding that ultimately I'm leading the parade and it's like the captain of the ship. If this thing's going down, I'm leading it to go down. So you never want to be that person. You wear everybody's, time and effort on your back. So it very much takes the pressure off having people you trust. And if you look at my credits of every video, I mean, there's a lot of familiar faces in there because of that reason. You don't have to worry about, do I have to like pull these visual references together? Are they going to meet me halfway and come with cool ideas? And you figure those things out as you're kind of building your career. You find certain people, you work with somebody, and you maybe, work with somebody new on a chance, and you're like, wow, that was like so much easier than working with the person I always used. And, I'm very loyal, and I'm never one to replace anybody. It's usually somebody in a key department saying, hey, I want to suggest something to you, just try. And then I'll be like, oh, wow, like, that worked well. So it's the tough part because I love everybody I work with, and I wish I could have a million DPs on one job and a million gaffers just so everybody could be on set. But sometimes you have to play in the sandbox that you're given, so.
Yeah. Okay, so we kind of talked about the arc of your journey from literally skateboard videos to your latest, which is Ariana Grande. That's quite an arc. And we've spoken a little bit about the bit where you didn't get to go to the school that you wanted to, and it kind of pushed you off the track a little bit. But so far, the rest of it sounds quite smooth sailing. But like, what are the challenges? Budding director, writer, producer, all of it. Like,
so nothing's ever easy.
No.
And so I would say, I mean, I wanted to come to Los Angeles fresh from graduating high school, and I didn't make it out here till, I don't think I was probably like 22, 23 years old, my first time in California. So like that was far removed from being a 16-year-old kid with posters on my walls dreaming of filmmaking. So, you know, let that be a note that you don't always have to, just because you think you're supposed to be somewhere doesn't mean that's where you're ultimately supposed to be. The journey's longer. But once I started getting established, I would say the big challenges were, like I said, the first big video I did was Roddy Ricch the Box, and that kind of smashed the door open. And that video came out like February 28th of 2020. So boom, the thing hits the internet, starts going crazy. I remember getting calls from everybody. I had sick work lined up, and then COVID hit. And I had 3 projects drop out. Like everything died at the same time. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I finally started to make it, and now we had no idea how long things were going to last, what's happening. I remember being like, when things do come back on, are people going to remember me? Like, is this big moment gone? You know, like you're like, it's got to be a fresh start. Am I going to get the chance to do something big again? So was there a lot of that pressure of kind of like soul searching. And like I said, I kind of need to create to
function,
keep myself sane. So like being locked up in a house, not being able to be on set was really tough. Yeah. And I remember ultimately, I knew an artist, Tory Lanez was an artist I came up out of Miami, like, you know, with, and he was independent at the time. And I was like, okay, well, I don't need a label and all the legalities of like COVID rules. I said, I know at the time you could have like 12 people on set. So I was like, all right, well, let's shoot a video. I could get a 12-person crew together, and let's just try to do something bold. So we did that. Yeah. And at the time I was able to get a lot of my good crew that were just feeling the same way I was, like, dude, it's not about money. We just want to like do something. Yeah. So we shot a video, and it came out sick. Ended up getting like the attention, like Drake ended up following me for it, and like got a lot of attention. And then shortly after, I got really sick. So when I was 21, I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is like Crohn's disease. You know, it's a disease, an irritable bowel disease. Yeah. And I've had bouts with it throughout my life since I've been diagnosed, but in 2020 at the end, right when things started clearing up and opening up and I was getting the chance to create again, I had a lot of dope work lined up. Boom, I got slammed with a really bad wave of it that was the worst I ever had. And I pretty much was bedridden for like 5 months, where like I've dropped all the way to like 90 pounds, and I was like a skin and bones, couldn't sleep. I was miserable. And I still was directing. So I directed a video for Tiesto called The Business. I did that remotely from my bed. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but I did that without being on set and literally like dying in my bed.
That's incredible.
And then I did another video for Marshmello with Usher from my bed as well, similar. And ultimately went from COVID shutting me out of being on set to a little pop of getting back into it, to then getting sick and not being able to be on set for probably 4 or 5 months. And basically I went back to Florida, stayed with my parents, and was doing a bunch of like IV therapies and driving 3 hours to get IVs and back, and whatever I could do to try to get healthy. And then that's when I started my company. I was like, I need to do my own production company. I had a falling out with the one I was with, and we agreed to go our separate ways. And I was like, I'm going to do this with all my friends. And at the time, all the ones that were doing movies with me as a kid, like my brother was the one, he was always out. He came to LA when I moved out and started producing. But the rest of the gang was like all working in the restaurant industries. And I was like, guys, like restaurants, a lot like production. It's line items. It's very much, you know, things like that. So you down to come do this? So they moved out, and we started my company. And the name, The Lucky Bastards, is that because, you know, I started it during a pandemic while battling a disease with my best friend. I feel lucky. Like, I'm literally a lucky bastard that I get to do what I get to do. So, yeah, the first time I was able to be back on set, the first video we did, like big video we did for our production company, was Doja Cat Streets, which is still one of my all-time favorite videos I've done.
Yeah.
And literally, I was on a bunch of prednisone. I just got off walking on crutches. Like, it was my first time. It was like a creative explosion for me to like get back on set and create. So that video to me is very special because it was this long journey of Roddy Ricch the Box to get to there and reset everything in my career, my whole career path, you know, going down this journey of now being a business owner and trying to take on this whole thing. And we did it. We had our little lumps and bruises of just the process, but we all learned from it. And it's a video that I'm so, you know, near and dear to, because when people ask me how did I come up with it? I'm like, honestly, I think it was just so much pent up creative juice in my body that like had to come out. And it just felt so good to be on. Yeah, it felt so good to be on set. And since that video, just never looked back, like really.
Yeah.
So I guess to answer the ultimate question is like, yeah, it hasn't been easy. And I guess on the outside looking in, you could look at me and be like, oh, like this kid probably had, you know, whatever happened. But that's why I love to talk about these things, because every time I was close and felt like I was making it in one way or another, I got smacked down, you know, down the steps.
Life really came and clobbered you.
Yeah, like but that's what I try to tell people is if you're really on your journey to be successful, you know, life will find ways to challenge you to see how much you want it. You know, nothing worse than climbing up 10 steps and you get to the top and they kick you down back the stairwell. Will you get back up and go up it again? You know, people are made differently. I've always been the type of person that I take the lows with the highs. And sometimes the good thing about a low is that, you know, the high's coming and you just got to weather the storm.
Exactly. And this is literally the reason the podcast and the platform is called GoodBadMad, because I just think creative careers are a mix of all three, and you've got to accept them as all three. You know, you can't just expect the successes, expect the shit, and like it's got to be everything, and that's ultimately what you're signing up for.
Like I have young creatives reach out to me all the time, and they're like, "How do you balance doing treatments and all that, and running a business and all this stuff?" And I said, you know what? Like, it's chaos, but I love it. And if you're not expecting to get punched in the mouth a few times, then you're not meant for this shit. Like, you got to be able to like even me, like as a young single creative, I used to stay up till 5 a.m. writing ideas, where now like I'm a married man. Like I have a whole nother life outside of being a creative, just shut in. So I give myself strict rules. You know, I create during the day, and then, you know, come time for dinner, I turn my brain off and I say, honey, let's do dinner. And I take the time and I jump back in. But I found a way to weave my creative process around that, where my brain now knows, all right, it has to be going in this department. And sometimes if I know I have if there's a real deadline, I'll say, honey, I got to do it, you know, whatever. But sometimes I'm laying in bed and I'm just seeing this cloud of creativity above me, and she's passed out asleep and I'm staring at the ceiling coming up with ideas, and I just write them down on my phone, and then I'll hit it fresh minded in the early morning. I'd say the funny thing is a good majority of my treatments are written, or at least birthed in the morning shower. You know, I'll be in the morning shower and I just put the track on loop, and I'll be standing in there with just hot water on me, and I'm just like fresh in the morning, and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I take that with me up to the office. So whatever works for you, you know?
Whatever works. So you've kind of gritted your teeth in music videos. Is that something you're kind of sitting in now and just that's your foreseeable future, or do you kind of want to go into the films that you would also match?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the ultimate goal for me, is to make movies, right? So I just haven't rushed anything. I've been offered many movies at this point, and I just am very particular about what I do first.
Yeah.
But it's gearing up. Like I have a project I've been writing and developing, and we're in the midst of trying to make a real press to go do that. I've just been enjoying where I am in music videos, and I think there's still a piece of me that loves it, and I feel like I still haven't. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're at the top," but I still feel like there's more to go, and I want
Yeah.
to keep going. And I enjoy the relationships I build, and working with such iconic, talented people, where you have the ability to leave a little mark on an illustrious career, right? So it's like you work with somebody who's an ultimate legend and has this illustrious career, and if you have the chance to do something that even brings them to a new tier. You work with an artist who is notorious for doing something, and you put them in a new light. Like I think that's so fascinating to me that I enjoy. So I think I'll always have skin in the music video game, whether or not I'm actually directing them, or like I said, I have my own production company. I love finding young creatives that for the most part are overlooked. Like I don't really look in the film school ponds. I play a lot in like the people who have something that I had and aren't necessarily getting a shake, and I like to give them an opportunity. So I think that'll be a lot of the stuff I do. If I go into film, it'll be developing young talent and overseeing a lot of this, keeping my relationships in the music video scene alive for new people to walk in my shoes, and just leave the music video game in a better place than I found it. That's what anybody wants to do. I know the day one of my creatives wins an award, that'll be super amazing for me, because that means that I saw something in somebody that I was able to put them in a position to change their life. And it's great to change your own life, but changing other people's lives is somehow more impactful. So
what do you think the future for music videos is? Because they're becoming rarer and rarer, yet bigger and bigger budgets.
It's so hard to say, because since I've been in it, the industry is like an ever evolving thing.
Yeah.
Budgets are all over the place, and it's a big to do with like where labels are at, where things like TikTok are, they'd rather take marketing money and put it into TikTok influencers doing a dance for a song before they ever shoot a music video. We'll just take off on TikTok, then we shoot a music video. So there's a lot less risk taking going on. And I think it's kind of like what you see happening in film. A lot less indie projects happening, and they'd rather say, "Oh, we'll spend 200 million on a big piece of IP that they know, like Star Wars is attached." It's like when you have big artists right now, they know, okay, we'll spend the money because they have the fan base to drive it. But like when you're in this kind of like bubbling artist spot where you're kind of in the indie, not you're signed to a label, but you're considered like an indie film.
Yeah.
Those budgets are hard to come by. A lot of labels used to be like willing to play with the money and give young creatives a chance to sink their teeth into. So those budgets are getting a lot smaller and tighter. So I always tell a lot of the young creatives, hey, you got to go down to the basics and create with nothing. Like I came up that way, creating with nothing, and I didn't know what big budgets were until it was my big budget, So I think a lot of established directors are now writing on stuff that's lesser budget against young creatives. So it's even more challenging. You're a guy trying to sink your teeth into this industry, and you're also writing against people who've done a lot of shit, but I just need the work. So that's very interesting spot of where music videos are. Do I think it'll come back around? Absolutely. I think no matter how you try to say TikToks or YouTube, I think no artist is getting into this game. A new artist in general is going to come into the music industry and be like, not have been a fan of music videos and be like, I finally made it. I got huge records, and you're not going to tell me I'm not going to shoot a music video. I want a moment. Nobody remembers TikToks. There's no like iconic TikTok, but are there music videos from 40 years ago that people are still going back to and watching? Absolutely.
The Paula Abduls, the Bob Fosse's.
I mean, Michael Jackson Thriller. I mean, people will watch. If it's iconic, it will live forever. And I think that is the biggest key, is like, when I walk on a set, I'm always trying to swing for that fence, right? I want to do something that will be talked about. I want people to gravitate towards. I want it to be a moment. I want conversations to happen. And I think the more you do that, the value of music videos goes up, right? Because, there's times where you shoot a video. I've shot videos where the label didn't necessarily think it was the single. And you shoot the video and you make a great video to it. Next thing you know, it's taking off and it's the number one record, and I've shot a lot of number one records, and a lot of it's due to, obviously they're great records, but a great record paired with a great video, opportunities endless. And I think because people gravitate, sometimes people watch a video and the song might not resonate with them when they hear it, right? You hear a song and it's like, you don't know if you love it yet, but all of a sudden you put a visual that really impacts people and they hear the song in a different way and they're obsessed with it. So I think they need to go hand to hand. I think the visual medium is so important. And obviously there's things with like AI technology and the unknowns of all that. But even AI technology, I think about it, I'm like, I can't see a world where you have Beyoncé's and Ariana Grande's who are comfortable being a digital version of them that they're not giving an authentic performance of, like, because all it's going to use is old stuff from them to create something new. And I can't see them selling that to their fans, I just can't see like me being a fan of somebody and the star power that somebody brings and accepting the fact that they didn't even have to be at that video shoot and that performance is a computer generated performance. I think that takes the human element out of it in such a way that it's one thing if you're using AI technology to build a world around a real performance or something like that to reimagine something, but taking out the human element, I just don't see where. Maybe it's a trend that happens, but I think ultimately people will miss that. Like I can't see a digital like artist and a digital star and people be like, oh, I obsess over this person that isn't real. And you can never tangibly see or touch. I just don't see it. I think that's why I don't worry about it.
No, I think it's a good point. Like ultimately artists would be saying, I don't want to be creative anymore. Here you go, AI. And
I mean, I could see certain artists getting away with it, right? Like if you're an artist who visually, like somebody like Sia, who never puts herself in the videos and just use like the dancer, like people like that, like a DJ Marshmello where you wear a mask, something where you can literally do those things, I think maybe is more open. But when you're Beyonce or a Lady Gaga and it's you and you are bringing your own expressive, there's happy accidents that happen all the time on a set. That I don't know if a computer was able to get because it's only reusing stuff to create. So I think the same thing about movies and all that. So I've had lots of talks about this AI stuff. And I think, granted, it's scary as hell because it's growing rapidly. But as long as the human connection and the want for the human element, I think we're okay.
Yeah.
I think in terms of commercials, it's a little more dangerous because, those like prescription commercials where it's just like talking about a drug and there's like people pushing a baby on a swing and smiling as they're cutting a birthday cake. Like that shit is going to be dangerously gone. I think those commercials are going to be never ever shot in real life again. But don't worry, everybody. You're getting into it at the right time. You just got to weather the storm. That's what I say to everybody. Don't be scared to do something because you don't know where it's going to be. You just got to ride the wave. We're all in this together. We're all spinning on a rock, floating through an endless universe at the same time. If you take it down to the simplest task and we're all humans, nobody's really any more different than the next.
No one's got any more clue than anyone else. You just got to keep powering on.
Yeah, you can say, hey, I'm a director doing stuff on a big scale and you're somebody just starting. Well, we're both human beings and we're both... That's all we have the common ground, it's just one person's been doing it a bit longer and found the right ways to connect the dots and,
I love that. Let's do a quick, you've already answered the big question, which is like, what advice would you give? So we'll just do a quick sum up of how you view your creative career in terms of the good, bad, mad. So the good, what's the best thing about your career?
Honestly, just getting to do what I love to do is priceless, and getting to do it with my friends and family makes it all that sweeter, you know? So I'd say to go from a kid from a town that was very far away from Hollywood, California, with no professional accolades of college or anything to open doors for me, and to find myself here doing it off of just sheer will and determination is the great thing. Because, you know, when you stare at the path and the journey seems far and rugged, there's no better feeling than looking back at it and saying, fuck, like, we're not where we want to be, but we're not in the place we didn't want to be either, you know? So it's a lot of that, you know, it's a lot of the reminiscing of the journey and kind of being excited about what's still to come. I always go back towards Matthew McConaughey's Oscar quote of, you know, he chases himself 10 years in the future. And, you know, you're never going to be satisfied because you're always chasing that version of you 10 years. And I've now been doing this long enough where I've been able to look at my, you know, 20 years and see like where I was as a kid at 12 to 22 to 32 and realize that that's exciting. And then what 42 looks like, you know, it just all compounds at that point. So very much, you got to start somewhere is what I always say.
What's the bad? What's the bad bit about what you do?
The bad about what I do.
Everything's got a downside.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, it's hard to say because granted, it takes a lot of time, right? To do it at a high end scale, you're constantly working. Like I have people that are like, man, do you ever get time to just do things for yourself? And a lot of it is work based, and I still try to find time to have fun because I think it's important. But I would say the bad thing is just, you know, maybe you have to you miss a lot of things. You have to sacrifice. Like I'm in a position right now, my mom is doing her 60th birthday and I might have to miss it because of a job. And my mom understands it, but like, there's always the guilt of that feeling of, you know, that's something you'll never get to celebrate with your parent ever again. You know, it's a fleeting moment. So I am trying to do everything in my power to not have to do that. But you have to sacrifice sometimes. And doesn't mean I won't celebrate something with her. It just means I won't be able to do it with the whole family. You have to carve out your own path. So it's going to take sacrifice. You got to be willing to do the sacrifice and make sure you surround yourself with people who love and understand the sacrifice. And when you do reap success from the sacrifice, make sure you share it with those people. So that way it wasn't in vain. You know, you don't want to just be this person that's like, cut your family off and I'm successful and, you know, screw you guys. It's better for me this way. So definitely don't want to do that.
That's lovely. And what's the mad bit? What's the absolutely crazy bit about this industry that just keeps you coming back?
I mean, the madness is everything. It's the high. It's the high of creating. I think there's the high of of literally taking an idea that doesn't exist, that's literally there's an idea floating around. I'm writing a treatment right now. So there's something floating above my head right now, swirling. And I have the ability to kind of grab that, throw it into, a physical realm of paper or computer, write it down in a way that's detailed to then send out into the world, to sink into other people's minds, to then see the vision, for me to get the yes approval, to then sell that creative vision into multiple creative people's minds, to all work together to make it happen to the way I saw it in my brain, to then print it, stamp it, and send it to millions of people across the world to draw their own conclusions and feelings for it, and seeing how their lives change because of it. That's a high you can't ever touch. Like, to me, that is the ultimate madness, and why the hell I do it is because I think it's just pure being on set, creating pure chaos, the whole process. And the best thing about it is, like, as soon as you end one, there's always something else. Sometimes I got 4 or 5 videos going on all at one time, and you're just, high on all of it. And then sometimes you have nothing going on. And then that's where you really find out who you are, because you sit around and you're like, holy shit, my life really is all work, because I don't know what the fuck to do with my free time. So I think all of them, though, and the great thing about Good, Bad, and Mad is without all of them working together, you could never do it. You need the good, because good keeps us going. You need the bad, because honestly, the bad, like I said, the lows spring you up into the highs. So even if the bad is really bad, you know, like your camera broke and you can't afford to fix it, and that's how you earn your money, like something's telling me that that's happening to you for a reason, and you just got to pound through it, and whatever's coming to you with that next camera is gonna put you in a new realm of opportunities. So it's all how you look at it. Like, I've looked at everything bad that's ever happened to me as this is meant to happen to me, and I have to look at it. It's like me getting sick in that moment. We could end on this. Like, when I was really at my lowest point, literally visibly in my life, where I thought I couldn't get it lower, I literally look back on it now, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's literally the single best thing that I think changed the course of my whole career, and the greatest thing that ever happened to me was me going through the worst time in my life. So anybody out there who feels like they might be at the low point of their life or in a rut, like, it's all perspective. If you look at it, stop saying, why is this happening to me, in a negative way. How could it be happening to you in a positive way? And sometimes that answer is not going to come to you overnight. Sometimes you won't get that answer to that question until 10 years down the road. So just be mindful and open to it. And I'm telling you, that's the only thing that really separates successful people, is people who are willing to just keep dragging themselves through the mud. If you get up and quit, you're done. You cashed in your chips. If you hang around, you might just poke through the other side, and you're like, fuck, at least I'm the crazy one who kept going.
You're the lucky bastard.
Exactly why I named my company that.
Yeah, you're the lucky bastard. Because you make your own luck, you know?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was brilliant, and I cannot wait to share that with everyone.
Thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed it. See you next time.